Good morning once again. Now, it is my pleasure to moderate today's session on legal practice for persons living with disability. At the core of our conversation today is a simple yet powerful idea that the legal profession must not just speak of justice, it must embody it. Because justice that excludes is not justice at all. The panel you're going to hear from today is made up of legal practitioners who've broken barriers, who've challenged assumptions, and shaped Kenya's legal space. And this is not despite their disabilities, but it's because they have shown up in their full humanity, in their identity, and in their brilliance. But today is not about exceptionalism. It is about visibility, it is about equity, and it is about reforms. It's also about shifting our focus from individual resilience to systemic responsibility, so that no aspiring lawyer will have to overcome the system for them to be a part of it. And so as we continue to have this conversation, as you continue to listen in, I invite you to have two questions in mind. The first, what is it that we are not seeing or making space for within our current legal culture? And secondly, what must we change institutionally, culturally, personally, to ensure that this profession is truly inclusive? And so I'm going to start off with our first round of questions. And to senior counsel, can you take us back to your first steps into the legal profession? What inspired you, and how did your disability shape your early journey?
Thank you so much for your question. I can give a little background as to how I came to get interested in law. I'm a village boy, and I grew up in a small village in Mount Kenya Forest. What inspired me in the first instance is what I observed at the village tribunal, where naughty boys were dealt with by the elders, where naughty old men were also dealt with by the elders. I happen to have been a son to the chairman of that village tribunal. And I got interested in how honorable they were in conducting those proceedings, how fair they were, and one of the best things they sought for was to be inclusive. Even when you offended the society, you are not thrown away. They wanted to bring you back, and they were very, very fair. So I, in Standard 6, decided, look, I would like to be a judge. We used to call them judges. And I said, I think I would like to be a judge. And this is my first inspiration, at the lowest level, as it were. And in Standard 7, I remember asking my headmaster, where can I study being a judge? The idea of a lawyer, in Kirinyaga there was no lawyer at the time of independence at all. So even the idea of some place to study law, or rather to study to being a judge, didn't exist. And I recall I asked my headmaster, perhaps you always say I'm the best student in the class. Where can I study being a judge? And she told me, forget about being a judge. Look for a big hook and ask your father to go and get somebody who makes shoes to teach you how to repair shoes. Not even to make shoes, how to repair shoes. That's what he thought would be the best profession for me. Luckily, I had a relative here in the city who happened to have gone to high school at Kivuti with the late Justice Njagi from Embu. You remember Justice Njagi, who was at one time director of the Kenya School of Law. So one time he came visiting my cousin, and they had been classmates. And I asked him, look, where can I start being a judge? Because that is the only thing that was in my mind, studying to be a judge, not a lawyer. So this is the one who explained. I was in high school at that time. Look, to be a judge, you need to study law. And this is how to study law. And from there, I got an idea about what was required. And he inspired me because he ended up teaching me. When I came to the University of Nairobi, he ended up teaching me and he encouraged me. And the most important thing in as far as the people living with disability is concerned, when you are looking at what you want to do with your life, is reliable information. Because if you do not have this knowledge about what is available, how can I go about getting it? And then what is it like when I qualify that I'm going to be required to do? You not be able to take that advantage. And it's very important, particularly for the young people, to know what they want is possible to be done. It can be done. So knowledge is very important. So that's how I came to be a lawyer. And my headmaster, primary school headmaster, if you allow me, one time I became a state counsel and I went to do a case in Embu. And he was there too. The person who thought that the best I could do was to repair shoes. So I found him there and I told him, look, don't leave. Let me finish my case. I would like to go and buy you a cup of tea. And after that, we went to Isaac Wharton. And I made sure that we sat close to some white men because I wanted to show him that we can be like the white men. And with his wife and the whole family, I bought them a cup of tea. Then I had a big Land Rover, government Land Rover. I took them home in Kirinyaga. He died a very good friend of mine because he was also happy I had not taken it against him that he thought I can only repair shoes. So that's how I came to be a lawyer.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Senior Counsel. And he's also raised something very critical in terms of role modeling, because he first saw before he could learn. He first saw other people doing it. So role modeling, something very important. Even for you as young lawyers, there's a high schooler, there's a child who's looking up to you, who expects you to be a certain way or to act a certain way. And whatever you do, whatever you say, however you act, could be the inspiration that triggers them or inspires them to go and study law. Thank you so much, Senior Counsel. So I'd go to Counsel Kamau, and I'll ask, and this is a question on systemic barriers. What are some of the invincible and cultural barriers in legal education or practice that often go unspoken?
Thank you very much. Now, I remember, and this is far back, I remember in the 80s when we went to law school. First of all, the thing that you got was a cassette tape recorder, B, a portable typewriter, and with those, you were supposed to now survive. And I remember that the environment was really, really crazy. For example, there were no Braille books, and there was no legal, computer resources. So that a book I remember that I had, the only book I had was Cheshire and 5 Foot. Do you remember that book on contract? Yes, and In Braille, it has 33 volumes. So you can imagine my small sleeping quarters full of that 33 volumes. And then you start talking about Saka on Evidence. That is a book that was a very favorite text for my evidence lecturer. And you know, that book, let alone being in Braille, before it's in Braille, it was in 10 volumes. So you can imagine how much it would have, you know, it would have involved getting it actually, you know, put in there. So we had that serious environment challenge, and our our readers, there are many people who used to read for us because the only way we could do it is read and Braille with a Brailler, which was the state-of-art machine we had. And something like this paper would be what we would Braille for our notes. And we'd put a lot of it onto cassette tapes, you know, those very delicate cassette tapes. And there would be, you know, sometimes they would twist, and then our material was all spoiled, and we had to redo it. Yeah, it was, I think navigating those challenges was very, very interesting. Sometimes you are doing an exam on the typewriter, you're typing, and the letters come out so faintly. I remember my lecturer telling me, come out, press those keys until they learn their manners. Because sometimes you would press and it literally wouldn't be seen. And then sometimes when you are doing a compelling exam, your hands wander away from the home row. And you know, you're typing away, but what you're typing, I think, can only be understood by President Putin of Russia, you know. It was a very interesting scenario. Now, it is so different. There is, I think, a renaissance with computers, talking computers. You can go to the entire. I think now I can compete with anyone at all, anywhere, when it comes to internet resources and research, you know, because now that barrier has been adapted. So it's very interesting what we have had to navigate. I remember one day missing a deadline for my land law essay. Why? Because the typewriter had broken down. And when I was able to submit at last after being late for a day, my lecturer, who was then Professor Okoth Ogendo, who was also the dean, said, okay, Kamau, you missed the deadline. I'm not accepting it. I said, I'm very sorry, lecturer. My computer, my typewriter was not working. He said, I am not impressed. And so I told him, all right, I have no choice but to appeal to the dean. and he then said, all right, the dean will direct your lecturer to accept you. Yes, so I think that is a sort of fun we had. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I like that you talked about things getting better now than they were many years before. And that's the reform, the institutional and cultural reform that we were talking about. Because now even within the Constitution itself, it requires that the state, to an extent, provides for persons living with disability the materials and the devices they need for them to do the things that they're supposed to do across all walks of life. So thank you so much, Council. I'll ask now an issue about navigating perceptions, and I'll pose this to Justice Laibuta. So on navigating perceptions, have you faced well-intended but unhelpful assumptions? How do you respond, and what will you want your peers to understand?
Let me begin with a little background. And of course, proud to mention that Victor Kamau was my classmate, having joined each other I believe it was in second year. Now, for me, the legal profession was purely accidental. Why accidental? Because I went to University of Nairobi as a BCom student. Again, a renegade in the sense that in high school I did sciences, but nonetheless decided no, I will have nothing to do with science professions. I'll go and do BCom. But then at the onset of my visual disability, I had no option but to take a career, embark on a career that was manageable. And that turned out to be law, and there was nothing else open to me. Little did I know that it would turn out to be one of the most exciting careers in my life. Of course, it came with mixed feelings. How will I manage? Getting back to university after losing a year during rehabilitation. And then what really inspired me was to see Victor Kamau and one or two other students who are going about their studies quite comfortably, or so it seemed, but with the kind of challenges that Victor has highlighted. Of course, not to mention the fact that we were highly encouraged by not only lecturers, but fellow students who supported us, our classmates who did reading for us, and all that, in an era where, as Victor has told you, we were really behind technology. There was no technological benefits to be enjoyed as is the case today. You've asked about perceptions. Yes, some founded, some unfounded. Indeed, this is one profession where there is a lot to contend with. First and foremost, when you think about accessibility issues, accessibility to information, access to information and materials, access to technological devices that support us today, and there were none then. It really wasn't easy. The perceptions that we had to contend with in those days was, how will you make it as a lawyer? Shouldn't you be a teacher? And I remember when I went for rehabilitation at the high school for the blind, most of the teachers were teaching me typing, braille, mobility. Wanted to know, why do you want to be a lawyer? There is so much reading to do in law. Why don't you just go to KU and do teaching, education? And I said, well, if I have to be a teacher, perhaps I will be a teacher of law, but I need to do law first. And the one quality that I had advantage of was really being self-driven, ambitious, and just wanted to achieve my goals, whatever they were. Some of them sounded like, pipe dreams, but But there we are, step by step. I managed to go to law school, finished, got into legal aid in employment, the first full-time legal officer of Kituo cha Sheria. That time Kituo cha Sheria was somewhere in the third world, east of Tomboya Street. And trust me, there was very little by way of technological support at that time. And not many would have an idea of what you had to go through each day. Let's rewind a little bit. In class, you're using Braille machines. There will be lecturers who would tell you that that machine is noisy. Pause for a while. There's a very important point I'm putting across. I kept on wondering, am I the only one? Or is Victor and I the only ones who shouldn't take notes so that we give others room to take notes? So there was that perception that we were just, perhaps just a nuisance. Then come finishing and you want to do pupillage. And it's surprising that some of the lecturers who are in legal practice who didn't really know much about disability felt a little awkward admitting us as pupils. And you can understand why, because they had no idea how to deal with us. What is it that we expect? What is it that they're supposed to do to support us? But there we are, managed to go through pupillage. Come to employment. I think that's was the biggest challenge as to how it is we would manage. But fast track. After my master's degree at the University of London, London School of Economics, it became quite an exposure where I came to learn about computer technology that would enable you to do your own documents and to put braillers aside and document your papers and all that quite seamlessly. And that made it easier for us to join legal practice in law firms that were quite happy to accommodate us. And that was the breakthrough. But my ambition pushed me also to teaching. I know my employers did have very good perception of our abilities, because at the end of the day, the one lesson I learned the hard way was that unless you prove to be the very best or better than your peers and compete not on equal basis, but have an edge on all of them, then only then would you be treated with equality. And that is how we managed to go through perhaps 2 jobs, teaching and practicing, and at the same time ambitious enough to sharpen our skills, professional development in various areas. But the perception has always been that disability will stand in your way. But the one lesson I've learned all along is that if there are barriers to achievements in our professions, those barriers indeed are in our minds. And that if we do not erect those barriers in our minds, I think the sky is the limit. But perceptions have been there, mostly unfounded. Others, of course, realistic, and a lot of others, unfortunately, not founded and misplaced. Let me stop there. Perhaps there will be other questions that can help us get to understand how we navigate some of these very challenging terrains with visual disability, and getting up to where we are today. But I need to stop here and encourage all of you to ensure that indeed you can achieve what you set out to achieve, and that only you would be your own barrier.
Thank you so much, Justice. And we are glad as a profession that you took that detour from accounting to law. We would have missed out on all this, the brilliance and the experience. Asante sana. So I'll circle back and go back to senior counsel, and this question is on policy and institutional reform. If you were to reform one part of the legal pipeline to support more persons with disabilities, where would you begin? Is it law school, the workplace, or the judiciary?
I would suggest that it be a multiple approach other than starting from only one position. We need to look at the teaching at the law school. We need to look at how we recruit the new lawyers, and when we recruit them, how do we encourage them to become the best that they can. And I think here, knowledge is very important. Making knowledge available to the would-be lawyers, it's very, very critical. Because one of the best things that happens is when you have somebody like you who has succeeded. You are always, like the judge has suggested, you feel confident that you can also succeed. Like in my case, we happen to have been two disabled students in my class. I think many of you have heard of Justice Wambilianga, who are the two students in our class who were disabled. When we finished law school and we joined the Attorney General's office, we were treated so well. We never felt that we were neglected in any way. You can imagine the Attorney General himself giving instructions to his driver that if there was no official car there to take us to the law school for lunch or to drop us here in court, he should take us into the Attorney General's car, come drop us here, and we do whatever we're doing, or eat our lunch, and then drop us there. Our colleagues themselves were very good to us. They helped us. Like the staircase was quite bad, but they would help us with our wheelchairs to get from the car and into the building. So these small things matter a lot in terms of encouraging the student or the young lawyer to become the best that he or she can be. And I think a lot of these things have been captured in the new law, because we must admit that we have one of the best laws on persons living with a disability. Many of you are aware of Persons Living with Disabilities Act 2025. It's one of the best piece of legislation on the persons living with disabilities. I think many of the things you have asked are covered there in terms of accessibility, in terms of inclusion, in terms of benefits that you give to persons with disability. And I would, particularly for the young ones, I would urge them to have a look at that piece of registration. It's one of the best registration. And you'll see a lot of our thinking as a nation in terms of what we should do in order to bring in inclusivity, in order to treat fairly the disabled, in order to include them by lowering some of the obligations to the state. Like if you become a young lawyer and you are lucky to earn 150,000 in your first year, you will not pay any income tax. Isn't that good? So I think most of the things that we can talk about are very well covered under that act. Yes.
So the encouragement is that we, all of us, we go look at the act and get to understand and appreciate its contents on some of the discussions you're having. One last question to you and one last one to Justice. Counsel Kamau, what does your vision of a truly inclusive legal profession look like?
two words sum it up: disability mainstreaming. In all spheres, everywhere, in the context of legal practice, judiciary, teaching of law, and learning of law, mainstreaming. That in all our policies, all our laws, all our institutional manuals, we need to consider, not only to consider, but to implement disability mainstreaming. That is to ensure that all our practices include disability-friendly environments adapted where necessary. For example, given the physical access, given the mental access, and given also the practice. Now, that is also in terms of reasonable accommodation, whereby every institution that employs persons with disabilities considered in what way it can make it easier for persons with disabilities to enjoy their rights and dignity in equality with others. That is the main thing. Yes, we are all equal, but as somebody would say, some are more equal than others. But we need affirmative action to ensure that those that need to be given equal opportunities to do what they do best and to enjoy their rights and dignity according to the UDHR and many other human rights instruments. The basic and important thing is inequality with the rest. It is not enough just to say we have equal opportunities, and yet you do not mainstream disability. It is equal opportunities minus equality with others. That doesn't work. So we need an inclusive culture to be built around mainstreaming of disabilities. I think Article 54 of the Constitution is very, very, clear that persons with disabilities are also to be treated equally with others. And this is where we come to issues of non-discrimination again. Discrimination can be subtle, very subtle. It can also be completely overt. And that is what mainstreaming aims to completely remove or eradicate to the extent possible. So that you can't tell me to drive your car, because definitely I'll drive it very fast, but I'm not sure where I'll be driving to. But you can tell me I can import a car free because I need to be, and to be given affirmative action on that area. And you can tell me that I can be provided with equipment that will help me to cope better, because I can do my job, but I need equipment which is specialized. So mainstreaming, mainstreaming, and mainstreaming. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I am glad that you've reinforced the initial parts of our conversation, where we said it's not about shifting our focus from individual resilience. You know, most times we focus on what is it they did to overcome the system. They've worked so hard despite all these challenges that they have faced. And yet it should be the other way around. Our focus should be on creating enabling systems, ensuring that systems are reformed, systems are accountable, systems are able to support each and every one of us to maximize on our potential. So thank you so much for emphasizing that. Mainstreaming, disability mainstreaming. And speaking of disability mainstreaming, as now we are focusing on young lawyers, a young lawyer who's perhaps getting into the profession or would like to get into the profession and is living with disability. Justice Laibuta, what will you say to a young aspiring lawyer living with a disability who's wondering whether this profession has space for them?
This is a profession with more space than we need. And I have good reason to say that, because I usually tell my mentees that take your law degree, not because it is a lucrative profession, not because you want some fame, you know, be referred to in the village as the lawyer, the judge, as Senior was telling us. Not because of that, but take the legal profession as what you really love to do. If it's in you, if it's your passion, the sky is the limit. Now, young lawyers coming up, do you know that there is so much you can do, not just with your law degree, but what the doors that are open for you, and I'll recount this for you to get an idea. Not many of you know that I'm a legislative counsel. And by the way, thanks Senior Gatonye for the glowing words you've had on the Disability Act. I drafted it and drew a lot from the global approach to the rights of persons with disabilities. Not many of you know that I'm a legislative counsel or a chartered arbitrator, fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, a mediator. And that tells you what doors are open for you as lawyers. You can get into academia, you can get into consultancy, as I did for quite a number of years. You can be a writer, and I believe most of you have gone through my textbooks in your training in the law schools. You'll be just about anything. You can be a journalist. You can be just about anything you would want to fashion for your future. The thing is, get to enjoy your profession, but you must invest in it. You must invest in time, in energy, reading, writing, and sharpening your communication skills so that when you come before us, we hear you speak in English, not in some language we are unable to understand. So there is a lot in stock for you. A long time ago, you just did your basic degree course, went to the School of Law, and that was it. All you wanted was to practice and make some money. Today, the story is very, very, very different. However, for those of you young lawyers who may have a disability, always remember that disability comes with a huge cost. And therefore, you must be ready to invest. In addition to the reasonable accommodation your employer may give you, you must be ready to invest in technology. And, you know, software comes in at an exorbitant cost. All manner of softwares. The one thing I never flinch is when I subscribe for an app. As long as it supports me, I really don't want to know how much it costs. Do you know today the Court of Appeal is 100% virtual? I practice, or rather, I sit at home somewhere in Vipingo, Kilifi. My researchers are all over, two in Nairobi, one often in Kisumu, another one in Mombasa, but we never quite meet, and that tells you what our investment in technology can do for you. So your professional development, your investment in technology really, really matters. And it's not until you achieve your maximum potential, it's not until you really are at the apex of your skills and professional pursuits and achievements that you attain what Victor has kept on impressing on us and the senior Gatonye, inclusion. And no good deeds of your neighbor, of your parents, of your friends, of your classmates and peers will serve much purpose unless they are only designed to give you support where you need support. So you must work towards your maximum potential. Just so that you are present and you are noticeable. For those of you with disability will notice one thing. The first thing people see in you is the disability. However, a point comes in your professional achievements that disability never counts. In actual fact, for quite a number of years, I've been what you would call a professional nomad, toggling from lectureship to practice to consultancy to all manner of positions before I settled in the judiciary as I am today. But there is not a single question that has ever been leveled on my disability. Why? Because your resume speaks for you. It's only one job I got, I think it was in my third, fourth year of practice, and my prospective employer asked me, now, I've read your CV, but I've never met you, and I'm surprised you are blind. And I said, yes, I am. So how are you going to work for me here? And I told this boss that for me, the good thing is, if you get me on board, I will never need a secretary as long as my reader is on my side, because I process all my documents. That interview was at 10, and he told me, if you're ready to report at 2 p.m., we are ready for you. So you can see how you have an edge over others by the kind of skills you sharpen. And you must begin now. You are young, you've got energy. Don't take it that, oh, the legal profession is just to make a little money and then you go and blow it up in clubs and leisure and so forth. Of course, there's always room for that. But you will find that you really need to prove your worth. And it's not until you prove your worth that you can say thanks to the profession that you embarked on. And at the end of the day, you really would be proud of what you're doing. Let me encourage you, beyond your profession, beyond your professional pursuits, try and widen out. Do much more than others would expect you to do. Why do I say this? It is because there are those perceptions that when you have this and that disability, there is this and that you cannot do. I've made it my business to prove people wrong. And I think if you can name the only blind golfer in this country, then you know what it takes to have a disability and be able to prove your worth and prove an equal. Remember, equality is not handed on a silver platter. It's not. It may be in our statute books. It may be in our policies, but no one hands them over on a silver platter. You have to earn that equality, because the mental attitude to discriminate can be overwhelming. You young lawyers, let me encourage you. Work, achieve your maximum potential.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A big thank you to Senior Counsel Asante Sana for making time for us today. To Counsel Kamau, Asante Sana for making time, coming to share your experiences with us, as well as Justice Laibuta. Asanteni Sana. And I think what you have left us with now is insisting that inclusion is not convenient. It's not an issue of convenience. Inclusion is something that should be non-negotiable for us within the legal profession. So asanteni sana to all of you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being inspired. Thank you for interacting. And may we not just go inspired, let us also go out there accountable. Asanteni sana.